the majority of baby food on the market contains foods that are naturally high in these toxic metals. Doesn't matter if it's organic or not. From decades and decades of pollution that has now settled in the soil to almost a century of use of pesticides that are still in the soil, including on organic farms. There's no way to like completely clean it, right? Foods like rice, the plant rice, kind of like sucks up that those toxic metals and stores it really efficiently, for lack of a better word. Sweet potatoes, carrots, the same. So when you're focusing on baby food that has lots of rice or carrots or sweet potatoes, those are naturally going to exceed levels of toxic metals that the federal government sets for children. So as much as I kind of want to see the corporate baby food industry start to go away, because I don't think that it's actually serving our children well, this is not like as nefarious as it sounds. It's not like, you know, something that happened in the processing plant. Like, these are foods that even in their organic form contain mercury, lead, cadmium, and other metals like that. So I'll link to the article now. Hey everyone, just going to comment more on the baby food scandal of late. Okay, so bottom line here. Processed baby food, so baby food in jars or pouches, and including rice, puffs, teething rusks, crackers, that kind of thing, baby food generally relies on a few ingredients that tend to be high in toxic metals, even in their organic, natural, whole food state. So rice as a plant sucks up like toxic metals from pollution in our water and pollution from the air that settles in the soil more effectively, for lack of a better word, than other plants, actually 10 times more. And brown rice, because it is unhulled, I'm not sure if that's the right word, actually has more arsenic than, say, white rice, okay? So the first thing to just recognize here is that rice, sweet potatoes, carrots, and actually a whole list of foods, which we will publish for you hopefully tomorrow, contain toxic metals as a result of polluted water and polluted soil. This includes organic farms. You have to remember that like 100 years ago, the kinds of pesticides we were using as human beings on this planet were toxic metals. So all of that lands in the soil. Coal plants emit mercury, methyl mercury, into the air that falls into the water and binds to the fat of fish. So there's really no escaping it. So one thing just to remember here is that it's less about what's happening in the processing plant, though I'll speak to that in a minute, and more about the actual ingredients that we're choosing to use in our baby food. Okay, so let's talk about the report's findings that the companies knowingly, are selling products that exceed the FDA limits for toxic metals like arsenic, and also talk about the additives that baby food companies put into baby food. So they're starting with a lot of foods that are already high in toxic metals. Even if that food is organic, it's still going to have these toxic metals. They're starting with foods like rice, sweet potatoes, carrots, yada, yada, because those, are nutrient dense foods. They deliver a lot of vitamin A and other nutrients that babies need. So they're starting with foods that are high in these toxic metals. Then they are adding vitamins and minerals, okay, to boost the nutritional content of their product. What we really need to crack the code of here, hold on. So what we really need to crack the code of is what those additives are, how high in toxic metals those additives are, and how much is really being used. Because when we're talking about parts per billion or parts per million, like, is it really that big of a difference that, 200 parts per billion of X was added to something that already had 900 parts per billion of X? I don't know. I think you're splitting hairs at some point, truthfully. So I think the bottom line here is that variety is king. If you are just eating tuna, you're going to end up with mercury poisoning. If you're just eating sweet potatoes, carrots, and rice cereal all day long, you're probably going to end up in a problem with arsenic at some point. You know, variety is everything, and everything in moderation, right? Now, the challenge with convenience food and access to food is that most of the baby foods on the market rely on a handful of ingredients. It's not a lot of variety. It's packaged as variety, but it's really not. I mean, you look at half the kale pouches out there, they're mostly mango, they're mostly banana. You look at most of the like orange baby foods out there, they're all carrots and sweet potatoes and some sort of mix of those. Those tend to be sweet vegetables, which is why they're used and why they're marketed. So we are going to publish a list of foods that tend to be high in the 4 metals that are of concern to us, as well as just sort of key facts and takeaways from the congressional study itself, because I think the media is not doing a great job of reporting it. And sensationalizing it a little bit. So bottom line, do not throw out your food. Food is better than no food. But aim for variety. Try to get off the rice-based products when you can. Like, just don't buy them again, right? Like, use them up, whatever, just don't buy them again. But rice cereal, rice rusks, puffs, those tend to be higher in arsenic in particular than say, you know, like a cup of rice, for example. So it's more condensed, and the type of rice being used is often brown rice. And while we think, you know, it's healthier and all that, it actually contains more arsenic than white rice because of the way it's processed, or unprocessed actually. So I think, you know, the takeaway from all of this from my perspective is don't freak out. Things are a lot better today than they were, say, in 1950. Like mercury, take toxic metal mercury, it's in a lot of fish. Mercury used to be in our vaccines, injected into our bodies, right? It was a stabilizer. So, you know, these metals have been in our lives for a long time. They're in our environment. You can't really escape them entirely. The best thing you can do is eat a wide variety of food. You know, if you're doing a lot of rice-based products that are processed, like rice cereal and puffs and teething rusks and all of that, I just wouldn't buy them again and try to get wean yourself off of those, because I know they're so easy. Talk a little bit about cultures who rely heavily on rice in their diet. So really interesting thing here. The way a lot of these cultures, so let's, you know, for example, rice in China or in Japan, prepare their rice, the way they are rinsing it and cooking it, and the ratio of rice to water and all of that, actually helps take some of the arsenic out of the food by the time it's cooked and being served. So generally the higher ratio of water to rice and the more rinsing, the lower levels of arsenic will be in there. So that's a really interesting point. The other thing is that there are some studies, and I'm forgetting which one, but that said basically like the kinds of foods consumed in those cultures may be actually countering some of the toxicity from things like arsenic in the body too. So it's really kind of interesting. But honestly, everything in moderation. It really is a good adage to live by and a good adage to feed your child by. So yeah, don't throw out your baby food. Food is better than no food. And just try to aim for a wide variety. We will publish a list of foods that are naturally high in these toxic metals, so you can kind of see things you might not want to repeat over and over again. But just know that things are also getting better. The FDA's limits for this were higher than they've ever been, even from a couple of years ago. And while I want to see them higher, I have to acknowledge that things are getting better, and I think that's an important part of this as well.